Hello everyone, in today's tutorial I'm gonna show y'all how to use the theme parameter in Godot. Theme is a resource that encapsulates all data about how UI is gonna be rendered. First, you would need to create a theme resource. Then I would recommend immediately going to project settings, looking up theme, and setting it as a default project theme. After an engine restart, it should be applied to all of the nodes by default. However, if you want to apply a theme to a particular tree individually, you can drag it over into a theme parameter. It will be applied to all children of this specific node. So now when you have a theme, before going to theme submenu, first we should inspect parameters of this resource. Two really important parameters are default font and default font size. Let's select the default font. I already added a .ttf file to this project, font called Comic Sans, and as you can see it's being used in all instances of text. Now, one thing about fonts is that sometimes they don't have symbols for all the languages, and you can fix that by going to your font resource and then setting font fallbacks. This is the fonts that will render if your font doesn't have a specific symbol for a letter. Let's create a new font, but this time instead of importing TTF resource, let's use a system font. Here in this font, we can select which system font do we want to use. And now if we add it to our fallbacks, it will be used whenever our main font is not used. Now, having set the font, we can set the size. By default, Godot treats this value like 16, so you can kind of go from there. I'll set it to 13 to make it a little bit smaller. So now you have a theme resource and you change the parameters to change the default font. Now let's see how we can change the default visuals of control nodes. Here in the theme menu, we have a really important tool called Control Picker. With it, we can click on any of the controls inside of our preview to start editing it. So for example, let's edit a button. Here, as you can see, the button has many parameters that we can change. So for example, if I want to override the style box that is used while the button is resting, I can click on this plus icon to tell Godot that I'm going to be using a resource for this, and then select my custom resource. Since I don't have a texture for a button, I'll just go for a style box flat. With this one, you can generate visuals with just parameters alone. You don't need a texture. Here, by setting the color and the corner radiuses, I was able to make a pink button. So this button is going to be used across all the buttons in the project. Well, you can't really see that one because it's below the scroll stuff. If you want to see what kind of parameters Godot uses by default, you can go into Manage Items, Import Items, and then here look at the default theme. That's the default game theme. And you can find our component button, and you can either click on just import if you want to import all parameters as null and empty, or you can click it on with data if you want to import all parameters with the default values. Let's see the difference. Import empty. Now as you can see, all these parameters became empty, all the colors became black, all the number values become 0. Now if we instead go into Manage Items and import it with data, and import it with data, now we can see all the default values Godot use. We can delete the font size if you want to use the default one of the theme. we can manually override all the panels. And this should be enough to copy the default look. Now, as you can see, everything that inherits from the button is gonna get the same parameters. So for example, check button will have the same panel behind it as a button. If you wanna, you can select check button and overwrite its panel. And then it's gonna be a override. And then it's gonna be a different one. If you don't like the theme you created for a specific control node, you can delete it by clicking on the delete icon. And if you want to reuse the same asset across multiple controls, I would recommend saving the panels as separate resources in your theme folder. This helps with having everything in the same place. Now, let's say I want to have two different buttons that are of the same type, but have different visual UI. What I can do is I can create a new type, and in this list you can find any of the type that there is in the game. This is an alternative to the color picker. I can type in just a custom string, cooler button, and here in the last tab, I can select the base type of this particular type. Click on the plus icon, type in button. And now I have the access to the same kind of parameters that a normal button has. So I can go into normal, change style box, and I should have a different kind of button. Question is, how do I use this in game? You click on your control node of that type, you click on theme, and in the type variation, you can choose between your button types. Boom, you're using a different button now. Now let's continue editing this theme. I'm gonna edit the panel so I can replace the background of the scene. I'm gonna create a style box texture because I want to use texture for a background. Here I will select my texture, background. I want it to be tiled, so what I can do is go into axis stretch, and in horizontal and vertical select tile. Difference between tile and tile fit is that tile fit will try to increase the size of our tiles so that it fills out the entire panel. And tile will just keep tiling it, even though there's going to be a little bit chunk of them left here. So now let's save this resource. And I want to reuse it in the panel container. Here, click on quick load, and I can find it here. Now this panel has the same kind of resource. Let's create a different kind of panel container, the one that has borders. I'm gonna create border panel container. Select base type as panel container. Create a new style box. This time my texture isn't supposed to be tiled, it's supposed to stretch over the entirety of a panel. Let's look at its preview in game. I want this thing to be of that type. I'm gonna select border panel container, and I'm gonna hide the subviewport container for now. So it is currently in game, but what it does is it basically stretches it out to the size of the entire panel. And what I want to do is so the corners aren't being stretched, so you don't see this kind of transformation. What you can select here is texture margins. Let's select these 2 pixels of a corner across all of the sides. As you can see, it applied correctly. Here they are unstretched, but these top things are stretched. If we go back to our subviewport, here it is. That's pretty much it. It's gonna contain the subviewport inside, so it already allocates some space for our borders. If you need even more expansion, you can manually select it here, but I personally don't need it. Let's select the same type for other panel containers that I have here. Boom, and now we have beautiful borders for all of our panels. And you might find this annoying to have to look at this scene every time you change something in this specific panel type, just to look at the changes. Another useful tool of this menu is that you can add your own custom previews. So for example, let's add this theme. Let's, for example, add this scene we have here. Let's open up this scene and let's add our panel. I'll reload the preview by adding it again. And now if I use the control picker on our custom type, it will automatically pick it as well. This is also really useful if you want to give your UI artist a particular scene you want to change. For example, a loading screen. They could just use a control picker tool on your progress bar, automatically select it, change it, and then be done with it. The last thing we haven't gotten over here is manage items. Again, we can import more than just the default theme. We can import editor theme. If we are developing a custom theme for Godot editor, it uses the same kind of theme resource. Or we can use a different theme in case you want to do a variation of a theme, in case you want to do multiple themes for your Godot game. In the first tab, Edit Items, you can manually add or delete parameters for your already existing items. For example, I can delete the panel of my border panel container. And as you can see, it uses the default panel of a panel container now. Alternatively, what this could be useful is that if you have a custom control in your game, and this is a really rare use case, but for example, I have a queue container, some new container type. For your custom type, you can add your custom parameters. For example, I want to add a constant number, vertical space, and set it. Oh, I guess you can't even set it. Whatever. If you look more at the Godot docs, you will able to see how to fetch these parameters from inside of your control nodes, in case you're making something custom. And also, I'm gonna link Godot docs page to fonts, if you want to read more about them, and everything related to the theme resource. Alternatively, if you don't like this menu, what you can do is you could go on here, key container, and add your parameter through here. Horizontal space. This should really be it. You should be able to replace all of the things in your Godot nodes, starting from colors, numbers, fonts, sizes, panels, whatever. It's gonna be all in one place. The subtypes are really useful to keep everything in one place and not have to use multiple themes. If there's gonna be some additions, I'm gonna put them in the comments below. Have fun making UIs for your game. This engine is awesome.